Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm Dr. Joe Hamlett, and as always, I've got my co-host, Dr. Dave Peltz. How are you doing, sir?
Well, most doing very well, most excellent, all those great things, Dr. Joe. Thank
Okay,
you.
sounds good. All right, and along with us today, we also have a special guest, a friend of mine. We've known each other for a few years, Mr. Greg Jenkins. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing really well. Good to see you both there, doctors.
All
Happy
right.
Father's Day.
Happy Father's
Happy
Day.
Father's Day. Well, we'll let you, they know both of us. We'll let you give a brief introduction of who you are before we talk about our topic today.
Sure. So thank you so much. First thing I wanted to say is thank you for inviting me on your show. That's an honor, and I'm glad to be here. So a little bit about me. I served in the United States Army over 28 years, a little bit of time in the Michigan National Guard. I was a combat engineer, what used to be West Germany, South Korea, Iraq, and towards the end of my career, got into working with organizations and helping them really make better teams. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm always excited about doing that. And I'm a father as well, father and a grandfather. So it's a special day that I really enjoy with my family and son and grandson. So glad to be here.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thanks for joining or agreeing to come on our podcast, Greg. Again, we'll jump right into our topic, and Greg's already mentioned it. But our topic today is making better teams. And so I want you to start off, Greg, and kind of give us your idea of what that means to you or what that looks like.
Yeah, I do a lot of work in this space, and I think the one thing I've learned is not lead with theory. We can talk about industrial theories of leadership or post-industrial or theory X and theory Y and great man and leadership principles and there's no shortage of them. The way I like to start off when I'm having conversations is think back to the best team you were ever on. Can be anywhere. It doesn't matter how old you were, where you worked, and it's always fascinating when I start there, because we're well beyond theory. Now we're talking about our own lived experiences, and I'm really hoping that all of us, I can speak for self. I've been on some really great teams that were led by some really wonderful men and women, but I hope all of us here and your listeners have had a good experience. And I like to start there because if we've all had a good experience of being on a really good team, well, now we know what it looks like and feels like and how it was built and constructed. And when it ran into some hiccups and roadblocks, how it recovered and continued to be a good team. So yeah, that's where I like to start the conversations, is kind of reflecting on, what was the best one you were on and why was that?
That's a very good approach, because you're right. Most of us, if we really think back to, a team that worked well,
Mm-hmm.
that immediately comes to mind. And now you do have a template in front of you, and you kind of understand what that looks like. So I think that is a good exercise to help other people realize, hey, you have
Mm-hmm.
been on a good team, and you can then start thinking about or remembering what worked well. What did we do
Sure.
that made this a great team? So I really like that approach.
Yeah, when you said that, I immediately started going through my cognitive Rolodex, if you
Exactly.
will, of, oh wow, this is a good team. Oh, that was a great team. That was a better team. What about that team? And I started thinking,
Yeah.
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
it's like you said, if you've been on a good team, which I'm pretty confident that everyone has been on a good or great team at least once in their
Mm-hmm.
career.
Yeah.
And you think about that and the challenges that they've overcome and how they overcome them. I think that's spot on, because if you can think about that and have a reference point, a template, like Joe said, then that's something you can build, you can use for any team in any
Mm-hmm.
environment, because you already have the tools. It's just emulating them and, perfecting and making those tools better.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like you just said, Dave, I think about that too. Like, well, this was a good team and that was a good team and this is a place. But I think what we're talking about and we're not directly implying is who is in charge.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's a difference between a group of people and a team of people. So a group of
Correct.
people can effectively cooperate with one another, to get to a certain task. If we can all stand in line, at a restaurant to wait to get seated, that'd be a group of people. But a team, that's a common goal. We're all looking at the same point of the horizon, and it takes a good leader to do that. And I'll share two examples. There's many, and I say that humbly and gratefully that I've had some bad ones too, and that's maybe a different podcast, but but a couple of really good ones. And one of them was a young E5 when I was early 80s in Germany, and Sergeant Reggie White. And Sergeant White was a black man, was an African-American man. And he was just able to, and I tell you, the little squad I was on, we were kind of like misfits. And so I think he was maybe getting punished a little bit because he was, take this bunch of this group of people that aren't doing so well. And I think he just gave of himself and, found out, are we doing okay? What are we struggling with? And he would roll up his sleeves and get his hands dirty with us. And I really, this is, 28 years of military. I reflect back on that man so much and modeled my behaviors off of him.
Wow.
Because I learned so many things from him in a really limited, short period of time, maybe 13, 14 months. And then I had got out of the Army at that point. But oh man, I miss that guy because he just had so much wisdom as a younger leader in the U.S. Army at the time, and he just had so much insight. The other one, and I'll pause after this one, which was like on the other end of the scale. For those that are listening that maybe don't have a military background, I'm gonna refer to this man as he's a full bird colonel, and he was my brigade commander when I was a drill sergeant. And for those who may not have a military reference, you would think about a leader who's in charge of somebody that's overseeing 400, 500 people, right? That's about the level of leadership this person would assume in a civilian world. And Colonel Lou Best. And, even though I was a staff sergeant, I was a middle grade sergeant in the Army, he treated everyone like we were the only person in the brigade working for him. I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. I would take a pay cut to work for him tomorrow.
Wow.
That's how motivating this guy was. Just because he saw you, he acknowledged you, he welcomed you, he valued you, he respected you. He wanted to hear your opinions about, how are things going? Is there anything I can do at my level to make your job better and easier? And that was like from the first moment I met that man until I finished my drill sergeant time and moved on. So those two I would really highlight. They really deserve honorable mention in this podcast about making better teams. So
Greg, you said something that really resonated with me, and that was he saw you and respected you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, and that's a huge part of developing and making better teams is you have to, there's a critical moment when you need to differentiate when to, I'm going to air quote, pull rank or throw your title out there as a positional a position of power versus dropping that for a few moments and just getting to know people as people, because regardless of rank or position, we are just people, and people want to be acknowledged. They want to be seen. They want to be respected. And that is huge because, and that's something that was critical in our development in the military. Unfortunately, only 1% of the population participates in that awesome exercise for all the good times and bad times that there were in there. But it did teach us that you've got to have each other's back. And that doesn't mean lie for someone else. That means you've got to work together at the peak level at all times when you're together. You have to have each other's back, whether you like the person or not. You have to acknowledge them and respect them and work together as a team instead of a group, like you'd mentioned. And there is a huge difference between the two. So when you said that, it really resonated with a lot of the things that Joe and I talk about.
And I'm going to go back to what you said too, Greg. One of the best teams I worked on was because the leader that I had was someone who actually challenged the status quo. That was huge. And because along with that, he also did respect, treated everyone equally. And the other thing that was unique about him was he was a younger gentleman, in this team that he was leading. And so for me, that was huge, that he would stand up for his team, and he would again challenge why we're doing things a certain way. And I gained the utmost respect for him. He also, back then I played a lot of basketball, and he even actually came out and played basketball with us.
Yeah.
So he stepped beyond just that, leader at the organization. He was a leader throughout the entire community. So that was very powerful for me to want to follow him. And like you say, that was in the late 80s that I met this gentleman, and I always remember him just because again he changed the way I looked at leaders, not just doing it because, but actually questioning, is this the right thing to do, the right direction to go? So
yeah, I'm thinking, we're all sharing these, we've had these common experiences. And Dave, I'm going to go back to what you said a second ago. 1% gets an opportunity to have these experiences. And man, I didn't realize how good that experience was while I was in it. I mean, I knew that, hey, this is a good team, and I really like Sergeant White and I like Colonel Best. But the gravity of how good that experience was really manifested itself later in life after it was long gone. It's like, you felt welcome, respected, valued, heard, and I think
and trusted,
trusted.
I mean, that's where you can sit down with another person that's completely different from you and have a candid conversation and learn and grow from that conversation because of the different life perspectives. I've met people, I was enlisted as well.
Yeah.
I've met people that came from very elite backgrounds that were enlisted because their family members wanted them to have that experience prior to going on and becoming leaders within the company.
Right.
And, I've met people that grew up like me, very humble beginnings.
Right.
But those are those conversations between the men and women of the military that you can have that I don't think you can necessarily have in a lot of environments today because the lack of trust.
Yeah, well, that's really kind of the glue, I mean, if we're all on the same team, and Dave, you're our leader, I'm going to do anything I can to help move the team forward on its mission or task or whatever. But if I'm not sure if I can trust you, I'm going to be in survival mode. Yeah,
right.
I'm going to be, I'm like, I got to survive this experience. And so maybe I'll do just enough to get by, but I'm a little unsure. So, and I don't distrust you, Dave. I'm just, using it as an example for our
I'm kind of a squirrely looking dude.
Well, I'm glad he said it. So. So now that you established, remembering a team that worked well, and then now you kind of identify that leader, what would be your next step in making a better team?
Great question. And so once we've all now it's in us. We're remembering our having our memories of good. And then we also sometimes talk about things that didn't go so well.
Right.
And we want to avoid those things.
Yeah.
But then it's kind of like how our brain functions in terms of how do we make decisions? How do things like stereotypes and biases show up? What are some best practices? And I think another thing that helps in having conversations with clients is in making better teams is their conversation. Their conversations with each other, about best practices, lessons learned, and then sharing those things. And I think what's helped me is suggesting to an audience, actually requesting, can we co-create a brave and vulnerable space to have some really good discussion? And I think it goes back to Dave's point about trust, so it's, I can't just walk into a room full of middle managers, executives, and say, hey, we're going to talk about making better teams, and this is a safe place. That's unrealistic. So it's about building that trust like Dave referred to. It's about, having us construct that together to start to get into the deeper conversations about what has gone well, what has not gone well, and how can we apply those lessons to the work we're doing with this company today.
Yeah.
You know,
And go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say that could be challenging. Exactly what you said. Walk
Yeah.
into an environment and say, "Hey, let's talk about these things," and
Yeah.
it's a safe space, because immediately those, maybe the subordinates are going to be like, "I don't really want to say that in front of my manager, director, or
Yeah.
Or
leader."
people that I don't know that might know someone that it could be
Exactly, or it
affected.
Oh
might get back
yeah.
to
Oh
them.
yeah.
So I'd say that'd be a challenging
Mhm.
thing to do or accomplish in that
Mhm.
environment. So you're right. It would have to start with trust and believing that what we're talking about, what we're doing, is going to benefit that organization one way or the other. So
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what I was going to point out is up until this point, it has not been mentioned as a criterion of liking the other person, being their
Right.
bestie.
yeah,
I didn't like a lot of the people I've worked with in the military, but we
Mhm.
trusted each other. We were a high performance team. We could execute, a goal, you know, with efficiency. That helped us learn to like each other, but we didn't necessarily hang out after work or off
Mhm.
duty and that sort of thing. And that's the
right,
difference with when you have a team that's integrated. You don't have to be besties. You don't have to play, softball together after work and have a beer, but you have to get along and know each other's strengths and weaknesses and trust each other.
Mhm.
Because, and I say that because I'm looking at society today, and there's a lot of, like on social media, oh, I like that person. Oh, I like what they said. I like this. I like that.
Mhm.
But that has nothing to do with a team or trust, and I think there's maybe a misconception that being able to like a person is critical to that team infrastructure, and I don't believe it is. I think you have to get along. I think you have to respect each other and accept each other, be polite and courteous and get along, but I don't think you necessarily have to, air quotes, like the individuals as a person. There's lots of people I work with that I think are great workers, but I don't want to hang out with them.
Mhm.
It's just not my
right,
thing. But as a team, talk about executing an assignment or a goal or an action or an assignment. They're spot on, and I know I can trust them in an environment, no matter what it is, who's on that team, where we're at. Those are the people I want to surround myself with, because I do trust them, because we can and do make a great team.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think there is, though, in my experience, of getting to know who my team members are, and maybe that
Yeah.
doesn't include hanging out after work, but I think if I want to try to motivate somebody, it's going to behoove me to learn a little bit about them.
Oh,
right,
absolutely.
What's important to you? What do you value? What are you challenged with? What's your vision? What do you want to accomplish? And that's going to require some one-on-one sit down, some investing some time in this, in all of the individuals on my team. What are they, what is it that they're trying to accomplish or trying to like hold together? I mean, you get some folks out there, they are struggling with some things that I don't know if I could, because
Yeah.
of their family situations, or their financial wherewithal, or their lack of financial wherewithal, or whatever, fill in the blank. And so I think good leadership requires me to care.
Yeah,
I have to
absolutely.
care about you, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're going to know pretty quick, I really don't care about you and I'm using you. And it goes back to, this conversation of when we think about the best leaders, in my mind, they cared about me. How are you
right.
doing? How's your family? How are things going? Like Colonel Best, what can I do to make your job better? Oh my goodness. It's like,
Yeah,
that
let me
was like
pull
a
out my
ray of
Christmas list.
sunshine. It's like, yo, here I have a list.
Yeah. This is just the first one. I have a whole nother, library full.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that, but he would, it wasn't like, he didn't have a magic wand and I'm going to make your world perfect, but at least he cared to find out what could he do to, impact or influence my world, my work world, to be better. And he did that with everybody.
Mhm.
So, but
Right. Yeah.
he got to know us a little bit, all of us actually.
And that takes me back to one of the jobs I had, probably early mid career, or mid early career, I should say.
Uh,
Um, I was still in the reserves at the time, and uh, the place I worked at was a very high stress environment,
Sure.
and um, we didn't have a lot of staff in this environment, so that made it even more stressful. And it was a very dangerous environment.
Hmm.
And I had two employees that would, I mean, not even oil and water. It was like match and gasoline. If they came within
Right.
5 feet of each other, it was just not a good day or
Yeah.
week. And, my colleagues, the supervisors I worked with said, whatever you do, don't put these two individuals together. And I said,
Hmm.
challenge accepted, and they're like, no, don't. We want to have a nice day, you know.
Yeah.
And what I did is exactly what you said, is I got to know each one of them
Right.
because I mean, they sat during the morning briefing, they sat at opposite ends of the room, as far
Sure.
away from each other. One person it's like they had a routine to purposely and intentionally avoid each other.
Hmm.
And once I got to know each other, it didn't take very long, but I had one-on-one conversations with them over a few days. And then I scheduled them together.
Hmm.
And they were not, I'm just going to say pleased. There was another word I was going to say, but
Sure.
they were not pleased at all. And when I went down there, I went down to the area where they were working, and they wouldn't even make eye contact.
Hmm.
And I knew that's not a good situation in the environment. So I said, hey, so and so, did you know that so and so likes to do this? And so, did you know that so and so likes to do that?
Hmm.
And they kind of looked at each other and grumbled. I came back 2 hours later to do lunch relief, and they were like two little kids, just like, what? Just chitty chatting. They were getting things done. They were having a good time. They were laughing and
Hmm.
chuckling. And it was because they did not get to know each other on that personal level. I'm not saying that they liked each other, but if I put them together, they worked great alone. But putting those two together, oh my gosh, they got so much accomplished that they were done before anyone else. And I was like, that's the team I want. So it can be done. You can have two people that are like oil and
Hmm.
water, be an excellent team together, totally respect and accept each other, trust each other, and not like each other. And that I think is
Hmm.
a great example, because at the end of the day, you'd see them walk out and they go just like that in the parking lot. They still parked in their two spots, must have been 100 yards apart, but it's that caring. It's just taking that time to
Hmm.
get to know your people and your team. We talk about strengths and weaknesses, or areas of
Hmm.
opportunity instead of the term weakness, and that's really what it is. It's getting to know each other, and that's what we did in the military. We laughed, we cried, we blood, sweat, and tears.
Hmm.
And that's where that trust is gained, is that shared experience. And in order to have that shared experience, like you're saying, you can walk into a room and say, this is a safe environment, and you can see people shut down immediately, or they start looking out of the corner of their eyes, who's in the room before I say something,
Right.
because that trust has not been established with
Mhm.
everybody. And it's not something that's going to happen in 5 minutes during an icebreaker, or even in a day. It takes time to deliberately integrate each other so they can talk to different people before that trust starts to form. And that's what
Mhm.
I started to see in the military briefings I was conducting. Is I do a 3-day briefing, and it wasn't until day 3 that you'd see that trust and that openness start to really flourish, because
Mhm.
it took that long of having them every 10 or 20 minutes switch and talk to someone different for 2 days
Mhm.
before they reached that minimum level of trust.
Mhm.
Well, I think another part of that that's important, as a leader, you should take the time to get to know everybody, and what their needs are. But I think in addition to that, when you're making a better team, you need to help them align with whatever the goal or objective is,
Mm-hmm.
to help them understand that.
Yeah,
And I
making sure
think
they're on the
once they
same page.
find that common ground,
Yep.
that final destination, then it becomes a little bit easier to learn
Yeah.
that, okay, I this is where we're all going. How
Mm-hmm.
we get there may be a little bit different, but this is our ultimate goal. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
another important piece of that, trying to form a better team or make a
Yeah,
better
well,
team.
absolutely, Joe. And that goes back to the beginning of this conversation, the difference between a group and a team. And, a team is
Right.
focused on a singular outcome. But, and Dave, your example of taking these two caustic people with each other, um, the other
Yeah,
thing
they
that,
actually asked to work together after that.
yeah, well, here's the thing though, but it took authority to do that. It took the leader to like make a condition to where, okay, we're going to bring you two together. So they had to have respected you to do that.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we're like, I don't care what you say. I'm just here to get a paycheck,
Right.
which happens too sometimes, right?
Mhm.
But I think the other thing that shared experiences are really matter.
Yeah.
Contact theory is the whole, which I think I didn't realize, how much contact theory was in play or shared experiences until after the military, like we were talking about,
Mhm.
because you had to work with people different from you that you normally I wouldn't normally selected, but now that I'm on this team and we've accomplished
Or even
something
be
together,
exposed to.
we got this shared experience. We did this together, and
Mhm.
that builds and builds and builds. If you got a leader that's aware of that kind of thing, you start building, this trust and respect, between where I want to work with so and so now that I didn't want to work with them, 6 months ago when I showed
Mhm.
up.
And you can have
Right.
those critical conversations
Oh
after the
yeah,
event, like an after action
after
report,
action review. Yeah.
and say, hey, Dave, you did this really well, but I noticed that you should, try doing this a little bit better. That would make that better. And it's the team evaluating and critiquing the leader, and the leader critiquing the team, and the team critiquing each other, having that open conversation because of that trust. There's rank and authority and structure there, but it's not about you as the individuals. Okay, we're a team. What can we
Mhm.
do to make things better? Joe and Greg, you did this great. Keep doing that. Tweak this a little bit. Dave, I know you're in charge this time, but next time you're in charge, do this a little bit differently. And
Mhm.
that's the kind of candid, open, honest conversations that we can have respectfully without
Right.
offending each other, because we know it's a shared learning experience. We still did something great, but we're there to make it better the next time, and better the next time, and better the next time.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think to your point about the feedback, the after action review
Yep.
is
Mhm.
be specific.
Yeah.
It's if somebody goes, "Hey, you did a great job
Yeah.
on
You
in
did a
that
great
meeting."
job,
Well, what did
Greg.
I do? What did I do
Did
actually
I
in the
Right.
show
meeting
up to
or
work
on
on
that?
time? Did I leave on time?
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. And I'll tell you, man, workforce performance or workforce performance really matters to the follower, to the employee.
Mhm.
Am I doing this okay? Am I doing good? Am I not doing good? Can you please give me some feedback? Which again, goes back to what we're talking about in terms of, knowing each other, getting to, understand what motivates people. Hey, I want to know, am I doing a good job or not? Please tell me. I can handle it if I'm not doing well. But if I
Mhm.
don't know, I'm just kind of floundering, in the dark here. So yeah.
That's
Right.
not right. Go back and fix this. What part do I want me to fix?
What did I yeah, where was the mistake?
Do you want me to put new tires, or do you want a new engine in this vehicle?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
we've got about 3 minutes left, Joe. So just a little time check there.
Well, Greg, we are winding down. Time has flown by.
Oh, it has.
I didn't even think it was that far gone. But we wanted to give you a last opportunity to throw anything out there that you think might be relevant to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I appreciate this an opportunity to share. I would say, what seems like we're just becoming more distant with each other, and I'm not trying to say this is not a dystopian message at all. I just, our abilities to connect, I think, have grown a little bit more difficult over time, with the way we communicate, technology, and those kinds of things. And my message would really be to people out there that are in management or leadership positions, and if it's as small as two people that you are in charge of,
Mhm.
get to know them a little bit, right? Understand where they're coming from. What are they struggling with? What do they want to achieve? And I'll finish with a quote from Booker T. Washington. You're in a leadership position, you have power and strength and authority. And what Mr. Washington would ask you is, or tell you is you can use your power in one of two ways. You can either help pull people up with your power, or you can help push them down. And my message would be do the former, help pull people up. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks for that, Greg. And again, thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your insights with us today. So, Dave, do you have any final comments?
I just want to thank Greg for taking time out of his schedule to talk about this topic of making better teams, and the different things that we need, the different components of it, so far as trust and openness and respect, and communication's a big piece of it.
Mhm.
Shared experiences, find that common ground, I just really enjoyed this conversation. I want to thank you again for joining us and taking time out. It's such a great time today.
Well,
All
thank you
right.
both for having me on. I really appreciate it. Happy
You're
Father's
very
Day.
welcome. Happy Father's Day. Well, we'll finish up here, and I'll just give my final thought. And one of the things I've been hearing lately in the last couple of years is that, Greg touched on it, getting to know the people that work for you or report to you. And the one common term I keep hearing is curiosity.
Hmm.
Just having a curiosity about those people around you beyond, again, just work, but find out what makes them tick, what drives them, those types of things. So, again, we've had a good conversation about making teams better. So I just want to end with, again, thanking Greg for tuning into this episode with us. And so for everybody out there, if this is your first time, thanks for joining the Personal, Professional, and Career Development Podcast. If you've been a long time listener or a fan with us, thanks for supporting. And again, if you know somebody out there who may benefit from this information, please feel free to pass it on. And Greg's information will be in the description as well. So with that, we just want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.